Hello and welcome to the first episode of ACM's Vault of Cult, the podcast. You may have seen the Facebook page, which has been up for a year or so now, where I discuss cult films, underrated films, the kind of movies that a lot laugh at, but many enjoy and have developed a massive following over the years. Usually they've got bad reviews when they come out, and lots of people laugh at them, but not us, not me. I've been a fan of these kind of films for a long time and decided to develop it into a podcast where I focus on a different movie each episode, starting with this. Each week I'm going to talk about a film that I grew up with and loved and discuss it with people who maybe haven't seen the film until recently, so have a different perspective of it, or someone who did see it years ago and haven't seen it since. And basically different perspectives on the movie. I'm going to start this week with 1987's Cannon production of Masters of the Universe, the live-action movie based on the toys from the 80s, which turned into a cartoon, comic books, was basically a massive franchise almost in the 1980s. And the film kind of famously didn't do very well at all, and took the film company Cannon a long time. Well, it didn't even take time to recover, because it didn't recover. It ended after this film and the release of their other big budget attempt, Superman 4 Quest for Peace. They'd released loads of films, famous for throwing money at different projects and getting some weird and wonderful movies out there, but it all came to an end in 1987 after these movies. Now, this is a film I did grow up loving. I saw it in the cinema. My parents took me when I was 6 years old. It was released on Boxing Day in 1987. I imagine I saw it early 88, and just remember loving it. One of the first videos I owned, bought videos, since owned it on DVD and tracked down from the Netherlands a Blu-ray copy of it. It's not released over here currently. It was very recently shown on terrestrial television, and I'm sure it's one of those films that will get a proper re-release soon. There's even talk of a remake or Netflix series based on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren, who had only been in Rocky IV before this, which was a massive success, and he's very memorable in that role. Looks the part of He-Man, often criticised for his acting, and personally I think he does quite well considering the character that he is playing. Frank Langella, Skeletor, gives a fantastic performance, which is the one thing that kind of everybody seems to agree with. Even in the bad reviews, people said he'd done a great job. Even maybe his mask he wears that doesn't look too fantastic. It's was supposed to spawn a sequel that turned out to become the film Cyborg, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, when this movie failed, but very interesting that it was an early role for Courtney Cox. I believe her first movie after being in the Bruce Springsteen video Dancing in the Dark, kind of famous famous music video from that era. So I'm going to shortly discuss with some other people about this movie, and we'd like to know what you guys think of it as well. So I believe on the Facebook page or any comments pages for this podcast, what you think of the film, what you think of our thoughts of it, and basically we want to share some love for this movie. So I'll go over to the conversation I had with a couple of people who introduced themselves about this 1987 almost masterpiece.
Hello, my name's Andrew.
Yeah, I'm Owen.
And we're here to talk about Masters of the Universe. You're in a band together first, though. We'll mention that.
Well, in very loose sense of the word, yeah, definitely one way of putting it. We should be banned. Yeah.
Do you just want to mention the band?
The Puka-G Players. We can be found on the internet if you look hard enough.
Yeah, you may also know our manager Jasper. He sometimes makes appearance in the acts. I know Andy spoke to him before about a couple of things recently, but
that's on the Faces of Suffolk page. which is a more serious, less film-based podcast and page. But we're here to talk about Masters of the Universe, one of my favourite films growing up. And you'd seen it before a while ago, yeah?
Funny enough, I watched the same version scene again because it was on telly, I think, tail end of last year on Five Spike.
It's that kind of film, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is one of them. But so I'd watched it, but watching it again, I think I got a lot more from it. But
excellent.
To that.
And your first time watching it?
Yeah, so growing up, my mum was quite censorious about the things I could watch, I suppose. So anything that was deemed too commercial or some sort of offensive in any way, that she found offensive, which involved a man in a skimpy outfit waving a sword around, I guess.
Yeah, it was the latter, not the commercial.
Well, yeah.
So she discouraged you from watching?
Yeah, so I'd never really had any sort of He-Man in my life at all, really.
Okay.
So I think I missed out.
Because I was going to ask, firstly, why you hadn't seen it before, which you've answered. But did you have any sort of feelings about the film going into it? Had you heard anything about it? Had you been put off watching it for any reason?
Not really, barring the parental conditioning, which perhaps served me well in some ways. Arguably served me well in this case, but no, it's I suppose I'd sort of seen it and thought it looks a bit kind of sub Flash Gordon. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but that was kind of the vibe I got. But no, it was just one I'd not really got around to yet, so I was quite pleased to indulge.
And you just randomly caught it on TV?
Yeah, I'd say my approach to watching films, which has served me quite well, is not really knowing anything about anything until you watch it. So I wasn't really aware it existed at all. Yeah. And as it just happened to be on, sort of, you flick through the telly and you see the sort of write-up and you think, well, I'll give that a go. And actually, quite interesting, really, when you actually look at the cast, who is actually in it. For the time, that's quite big names. So in a way, you look at that and you think, in my head, I didn't know a lot about He-Man. I suppose it's perhaps a bigger thing then than it certainly was when I was growing up. It sort of seems, well, quite interesting to me that such a strange topic in a way has such a big film.
Yeah.
At least in terms of what you could associate with it.
So neither of you seen the cartoon or anything?
Only sort of little bits in passing. I think when we were younger, there was a sort of a revival, probably sort of around 2003 kind of time.
Yeah,
I don't know if I was thinking it was one of those things you were aware of, like He-Man, Skeletor, I Have the Power.
Yeah.
And then apart from that, there's a lapse in that and probably Money Supermarket. But
oh yeah, because a lot of the criticism was there was too many changes from the animated series. But originally it was just a toy line before there was a cartoon anyway. But I suppose it was in sort of people's minds, the stories. But the main reason for that, I think, is the budget. So it's obvious that they've set the majority of it on Earth to say build big sets. And the sets you do see are clearly paintings, aren't they? That open and seen.
But they're nice paintings.
It looks good though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think they've done a good job of that. And a lot of the characters have changed or missing. Like, there's a character called Orko who's supposed to fly, but they've more or less changed that with the Geldor, the little sort of elfish type.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought looked pretty good for the budget, really. Did it seem like some of the opening scenes? It opens up, and should we mention all the way through it sort of clearly rips off other films?
Yeah, I'm down for a bit of that.
From the opening credits.
The opening credits is, well, I mean,
Superman, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's got the flying credits and the music. It's got the feel of it. It's not the theme doesn't rip anything else off, I don't think.
No,
but it's got that big feel.
That's Bill Conti playing John Williams' Chicken, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many notes can you play in a row of John Williams without getting caught?
Yeah.
Because it does start Superman, then it automatically goes into the Star Wars slightly kind of Mars-esque sort of theme there.
Yeah. Interesting you say Star Wars because they've built in some sort of stormtrooper type characters in it which aren't in the cartoon or they weren't toys. And the post they are.
I really like
and the poster says this year's Star Wars. The original poster said that. And, because it was literally they wanted another franchise like Star Wars to sell more toys, do loads of sequels, and you can see that all the way through it. And the Stormtrooper characters, they made robots because the toy company, I think it was Mattel, didn't want He-Man to actually kill anybody in the film, which later on I think he possibly does it. A lot changed during the film. It went from a 17 million budget to 22 million. And do you know the story behind the ending of it as well?
The studio basically pulled the plug, and then they had to turn all the lights off and then contrive a sort of plot device to explain why they're having a fight in the dark.
Exactly, yeah, and it was stopped well before the end. Then they were allowed to get back to shoot the final battle scene. The actual end had been done, but the main battle hadn't. And there's a lot of rumours that the director actually paid for that himself. A guy called Gary Goddard, I don't reckon many people have heard of.
No.
He'd done a TV series called Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
Sounds amazing.
It is, and it looks very much. All of them dressed like Man at Arms does in this film.
Yeah.
And that was like same year, 1987, but probably before the film. Hence, you got the film, and it was basically a cartoon series like He-Man, Thundercats, but live action.
Oh.
The budget was huge, and it over here didn't do very well. I think done okay in America. I saw it probably early 90s. It was repeated on the Sci-Fi Channel,
right.
And I remember thinking that looks like the He-Man film. And it wasn't until I was researching this that I realised it was the same guy behind it. But we'll just talk about the look of the film. Did you think it, like the costumes, the sets, did it look particularly bad or low budget to you?
I personally, not really. I think it might be coming to me where, you know, the limitations of the film are potentially there for the budget coming later, but the look of the film, particularly if you kind of see what it is, kind of, you say, something that's potentially kind of trying to ape after a Star Wars market, you can list so many other films and you say, not really a million miles away from. Completely different thing, but I kind of got a bit of kind of Willow vibes from it in places.
Yeah, it is. And it's around the same time. I think Willow would have been 88, 89. And I watched Willow a few years ago, and that doesn't particularly look any higher budget than this.
No, that's what.
It's
you know, it's that same. Well, maybe it's kind of.
Willow's held in higher esteem, is it? I
always get the impression so. Yeah.
Certainly these days, it's perhaps had a bit of a sort of reappraisal.
Yeah, but has it got the sort of cult following that Master Universe has? I mean, there's people who love Master Universe.
I don't think you'd ever say Willow has a cult following.
No, it's not. It's one of those people like it, but it's not say Labyrinth or so, like Flash Gordon, for example, which got bad reviews and bombed, but people love it. And I think the reason is Willow's simply, it's got the style, but it simply isn't as good as these films, and it hasn't got that charm.
It's safe, isn't it?
There is a bit
Ron Howard, dare I say it?
yeah.
There is a certain pomp, I guess, to something like Master of the Universe.
Yeah.
Like a love it or loathe it.
Yeah.
There is a man wearing only a loincloth, with a sword as long as your leg.
Yeah, which
the same
that isn't why I love that film.
Yeah, that's a coincidence.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter if it was. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But mentioning Flash Gordon as well, which I think there's a lot of similarities in Dolph Lundgren's performance as Sam Jones in Flash Gordon, and there's relation to the character, as in there's people around him who almost do most of the dialogue.
Yeah, and the depth.
And there's
nothing wrong with that.
I mean, when you watch this film, I mean, why are Man at Arms and Teela there? All they do is say the dialogue around him. Really,
it makes the film that much better. It's actually really clever because Dolph Lundgren, to my money, comes across really well in it.
Yeah,
like if you looked up on it, Dolph Lundgren at the time maybe thinking himself he's a bit of an action star, maybe a bit of hardcore, and now he's in like a toy film.
Well,
but he has a sort of sincerity to it, but like a light sincerity. Like he laughs when he gets spewed over with liquid from a puppet's ear. You know, he's with it. He's happy to be part of it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I don't know if he'd actually done his action stuff till after this, because I know he was in Rocky IV and then this, I think.
Oh, really?
I'm unsure whether. But then later on he done Punisher, and then the almost Van Damme style action films. But there's a story of when this was being made, Stallone was making Cannon films as well. You know, and Cannon are sort of known for being low budget, but they got Stallone done Over the Top and Cobra. Which Cobra, I don't know if you know, this is a fun fact. It's the same script as Beverly Hills Cop was meant to be that film. Jesus. And then they developed it into a comedy.
Imagine
and then exactly. And then they done the serious version.
Sylvester Stallone, Beverly Hills Cop.
Well, and then there's a story of Sylvester Stallone talking to the director or producers, or whatever. Oh, you've got Dolph Lundgren. What, you've given him lines? And he sort of joked about, and the irony of Stallone saying that is quite, because he's quite hard to understand, and he's not known for his delivery of lines. But I think Dolph Lundgren's fun. There's a few lines, like he says something when he's been handcuffed and walked off, and he's like, "The people don't deserve to die." He says something really stupid, but that's more, I suppose, the writing, and
it's the kind of character he's playing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is He-Man as a character capable of emotional depth?
Yeah.
But you wonder if it had maybe come out sort of 3 years later, once he sort of brushed up on his English a bit and had a bit more practice acting.
I don't know if it worked.
Well, I don't know. Would it have worked better? Or
no, I think there's a kind of charm to it in the sense that he's just almost not happy to be there.
Yeah.
But he throws himself into there's definite.
Yeah.
The fight scenes, the dialogue, the way he's interacting with things, he's happy to be there, not in like a charity case kind of way.
Yeah, and I think this was a big film, even though it was made by a small studio, it was a big film because of what it is. And I think this was his chance to become more of a mainstream actor. And so he's having fun with it, and he might have possibly gone on to do more like Arnie done, mixing the comedies up as opposed to the action. And as far as I know he was in Kindergarten Cop 2 fairly recently. But other than that, I don't think he's done family films or comedies. It's all been the action films.
Yeah.
And
sort of TV works where he's sending himself up. He
Yeah.
shows up in Chuck and Always Sunny in Philadelphia playing
himself.
stereotypical action guys. Really.
Yeah. So it's a shame. But other people in this film, I mean, did it affect Frank Lagella's career? I don't really think so.
No. Great thing.
And Courtney Cox went on for a while to be a big star. I mean, wasn't just Friends. She was in Scream. Ace Ventura was a big hit not too long after.
Course, yeah.
So it didn't seem to affect her career. And the is it Kevin, the young guy, who went on to be
Tom Paris, isn't he?
Is that Star Trek?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which Star Trek was that? Voyager?
Yeah, I think he was in
Yeah.
Next Generation originally, playing more or less the same character, but they had to change his name for like rights reasons.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then shows up in Voyager, yeah.
And is it James Tolkien?
Yeah, great role for him as the cop.
Yeah.
He's possibly one of the best in it.
Yeah,
He played that character out his whole career, and he's the principal in Back to the Future.
That's
so
it.
that-
Dude in Top Gun as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Writing checks your ego. Your ego's writing checks you something body
you
can't.
sort of
cash
can't-
or something.
Yeah, there's
Gum.
a line about plastic dog shit or something. as
Something
well.
like that.
Yeah,
Great man.
but he's he always played. Well, what I like about him as an actor is he kind of. Well, I've only seen him play that same sort of character, but he's so good at it. And
he's one of those actors who's owned it.
and in this film, for a film with a lot of comedy anyway, he's still the comic relief, and he's actually got more to do in it than he does have in Back to the Future, and I think he's a lot more likeable. You see him; he starts off as the angry cop, and then he ends
Very
up.
quickly, he's quite sympathetic. He's like, all right, well, go and help you then.
Yeah. But,
But it's kind of a strange sort of role in it, though. In the sense
Yeah.
he helps them, but he doesn't really know what's going on. It's kind of like it's almost like he is having a mental breakdown.
Yeah. And then there's the brilliant bit at the very end where he ends up staying in Eternia.
Just 'cause he's got a bit of a hussy on his arm.
Yeah, exactly. And
Fantastic,
it's a bit of a Mandela effect for me for that, because I always thought he was surrounded by women. That's why he stayed. But he's actually just one, isn't it? But actually, he's a very nice man as well. I met him at Comic-Con.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
all for Back to the Future. And some of the cast were there. And I met him. Still a big queue to meet him, actually. And I mentioned Master Universe. I love that film. And he was just like, yeah, and nodded with a smile. So I think he did as well. And
Oh.
possibly because he's got a good role in it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Strickland's a great character, but it's very 2D. It's very just the headmaster. He's
the bully, but older, isn't he?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Did he ever have hair? No, that's the line.
Yeah.
But should we talk a little bit about the plot? Because personally, I think it's quite an interesting. It's not just simply bad guy versus good guys.
No.
Stuff goes on, and I did read that originally it was all meant to be set on Earth, but the intro is basically Skeletor takes over Castle Grayskull, kidnaps the sorceress, who is Courtney Cox's mum in Friends, same actress.
Oh,
Fun fact. I better research all these podcasts this much. Cause
You're setting the bar here.
yeah. And He-Man and his gang of friends get back into Castle Grayskull to save the day. There's a cosmic key, which is how
Japanese synthesizer.
yeah, which I'm going to talk about in a minute because there's a lot to say about it. Which is how invented by Geldor, a little machine that can move you anywhere basically, and that's how Skeletor got into the castle. So they've got another prototype. All goes crazy. Long story short, they end up in Earth, the good guys, and the synthesizer, and got to get back to save the day on Eternia. Have I summed that up well?
Yeah, that's
kind of-
pretty
that's the
comprehensive.
premise,
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. And then a lot of fish out of water gags in Earth.
Not as many as I'd have liked.
There's some, and
I think that might be sort of budgetary reasons that they couldn't have them interact with people.
yeah,
It's one of those things, isn't it? I don't know what you'd change with the plot. It's almost the waiting, and sometimes like the character you almost want more. And then again, the film, it is runtime. Was it? Must be
1:45.
Yeah, I was going to say it's pushing 2 hours, so it's not a short film. It's not.
No.
It feels. Maybe that's why it's so
It breezes
charming.
along, doesn't it?
You almost want more. You could easily
Yeah.
do another 20 minutes, half hour.
Yeah, but
I'm not sure of what, but you know.
Well, I think if it was made nowadays with the sort of 2 hour length of Marvel films and 8
yeah.
hour length of DC films, that, it would definitely be over 2 hours now.
Yeah.
And I like the fact it's kept short and
It's not to its discredit, but
yeah.
it's good that at least you wanted more. I think.
exactly, yeah. Yeah. There is the post credit scene of his face popping out of the sort of. It looks like the slime from Ghostbusters 2, but it's kind of like a lava and Skeletor pops his head out. So
freeze frame though on his face is
it's eerie.
eerie. Yeah.
Yeah, but they go back to Earth at night, which is you mentioned the budget. So this all takes place at night. So everybody else is tucked up in bed. So there's lots of scenes on the street. It's like the 20 soldiers of Skeletor marching through an abandoned high street is supposed to sort of represent them taking over the world, I suppose. But that's one of those things. And they did actually burn down a school gym by accident while doing there's a sort of fight action scene, which is quite dark and scary for kids. Some of it, I mean,
Yeah.
like Beastman and the other sort of henchmen are quite menacing and scary.
Apart from the eye patch guy.
Yeah.
What, Blade.
Blade, that was the stunt coordinator. They gave a role in the film, and that was him. And yeah, he's just like I don't know. He almost,
I love him. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
But he's in a different film, I think.
he's in one of those sort of very low budget fantasy sword type films, isn't he? Or 18 with the well drawn video cover, but then it's just filmed in Wolveswood, and he's in one of those.
But it's threatening. It is that kind of bit in the school where she gets, well, the Courtney Cox character,
Yeah.
Janie gets attacked. That is quite, as you say, that is quite scary in its
So,
way.
yeah.
Just that kind of nameless terror that
Yeah.
even the kind of responsible adult figure in the caretaker in there,
Yeah.
he's pretty much killed. He's not dead,
Yeah, they chuck him about and everything, don't
but
they?
he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
He's dealt with.
Yeah, and this is a film which is still a PG certificate. It might, if they reissue it like they do, it might possibly go up to a 12. It was released before 12 was out.
It's
and
kind of anti-Eternians, isn't it?
yeah. But I think there's a scene with Courtney Cox's leg gets messed up, and that looks a bit gooey.
Oh,
and-
yeah,
That's
no,
great.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that was
It's grisly.
That's you look at that. I looked at that yesterday when I watched it. And it's gone bloody hell.
Yeah.
You know, that's more than a trip to the A&E there.
Yeah.
Need more than
Yeah.
a little dapper Savile for that.
Swearing wise, there's a few shits, and that's about it. Which
But
And
that's
also
still
they
quite
say
funny
shit
when
a
it's in
couple
a
of
film
times.
about a toy franchise.
That's what I mean. I remember as a kid thinking, oh, they've said you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah.
And that's all the Strickland characters swearing. I think. You don't catch He-Man swearing.
Probably didn't know how.
But there's no Prince Adam in the cartoons. Prince Adam was
He's the alter ego in it.
yeah, who looks same face, not even glasses like my Clark Kent. It's just the same face.
When He-Man gets bored, isn't it? He's a spent force. He goes back to being normal.
Yeah, that's basically. And he's Battle Cat, big tigery beast, turns into a very scared cat called Cringer.
Oh.
And I think that's definitely a budget thing when they can do
Yeah.
it. It'd be if they'd done it now. It'd be nice if they'd done a sort of almost Jim Henson style tiger. That would be
great.
awesome. Which could happen because there is talk of a remake, but we're talking about this at the minute. So the talk about the special effects. I mean, did you guys firstly think that the plot was admirable?
I mean, it's not what you'd necessarily be hoping for from a film like this.
Yeah.
Because you think, particularly with a film, like really straight off the bat, the story's going, and you think, oh, this is great. I'm in for a romp, you know. Yeah. And then, oh, right, so now we're outside some diner in the sort of middle of nowhere. Oh, okay, they're doing that, and you can sort of understand it back then, like the budgetary constraints and stuff like that. I mean, is there any precedent for He-Man and Earth, or is this?
It's just a coincidence, isn't it? That's the. I think it might have been quite fun if they went back to Earth and He-Man did exist as a cartoon when they were back.
Whoa.
Last mind bending.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's the whole plot. I think has come about because of the budget and how fun to set it on.
I think they do well with it, but you can almost tell like they're making up as they go along. It feels, as you say, the way they start. It feels. I know that's clearly not how they made the film, but it does feel like they run out of money halfway through the opening scene.
Yeah,
and then had to quickly change direction. But when they go there, they start dealing with the kind of plot of bereavement if the girl's lost her parents and then she's going to leave home, and it's almost like they're doing a classic kind of pseudo narrative about growing up.
Yeah,
about the teen leaving home.
From
I'm not sure
they do it well.
It turns the film almost interestingly into some kind of growing up story.
Yeah.
Kind of accidentally, and they don't really commit to it, and then they kind of get thrown. Right, her parents are dead. She wants to leave, but leave that. You know that now. You don't need to worry about that because He-Man's here, and that plot line's not really going to come up ever again.
No,
up until the end.
Yeah, well, there's a bit with Evil Lynn being the mum, and Meg Foster's Evil Lynn, I think, is brilliant.
Fantastic.
She's got the eyes.
Can't fault that at all.
There was her eyes look that menacing.
Put contact lenses in it. They said, we'll change the eyes. And that was mental. Why they want to do that?
Yeah, because
those eyes are terrifying.
Yeah, so they didn't, did they? And that's same budget there.
Yeah.
But she's a really good actress in horror films, mainly sort of.
And They Live, where she has 2 whole scenes.
Yeah, and she's one of the main. Yeah, she is in that, but she's a really good actress in Quantum Leap as well, one of the greatest series ever made. But that's the first thing I think what made me aware of her career when I was 6 when I saw it, and I think she's perfect as the role. And there's a few Shakespeare references in the film. I've written them down, but I'm not going to look because I've got loads of notes here. But then in an interview, she compared her character to Lady Macbeth. How she at first really likes Skeletor, and there's obviously some sort
there is a scene near the end, isn't it, where she sees what's going down, and it's not even I don't think, from my perspective, is that even clear for the film that Skeletor's a spent force. If anything, he's throwing his lightning light around like a good one. He's King Skeletor. He's having a blast.
Yeah,
and then she just mugs him off.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of. For a PG sexual tension between the two earlier, and I think it's made clear that he's just using her and doesn't. He's all about himself, because there is some sort of line where she says we will take over, and he's like I will, and that just makes it a little bit more interesting because the rest of the villains apart from Skeletor are just henchmen.
Skeletor's almost a bit of a worse, isn't he?
He is in the cartoon.
So it's kind of stranger in the film as well. That kind of. I know he wants to see He-Man broken, but he almost seems to lack the resolve to do what's necessary.
What I always like about that Skeletor as a character is he's just evil for the sake of being evil. There's no other. He just wants to take over and
the classic villain plan, but you're not really sure what he's going to do once he gets there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just going to see what else I've got because. Oh, his makeup as well, Skeletor. I mean, I think Gweldor looks brilliant.
Yeah.
Almost like something out of Dark Crystal or something like that.
I mean, his whole introduction is pretty much like Dark Crystal, isn't it? What's the face? Orgra?
Oh, from Dark Crystal.
Yeah, that whole scene where you sort of first come across him and he's like, right, we need to get out, is much like her when all the Beatley dudes.
Yeah.
That scene felt exactly the same to me.
Because one of the writers did write Dark Crystal and done Supergirl as well, which is an episode list I'm going to do soon, which will be interesting for if anybody else liked it. But yeah, the Skeletor, he's not yellow like in the comic. He hasn't. So cartoon, and he hasn't got the sort of muscular body, which kind of works for the film. If you're honest.
Yeah.
But there's not much facial expression. It's all in his eyes because it's a solid mask. But the nose. Should we talk about Skeletor's nose?
Yeah.
And the cloth nostrils therein.
Yeah, it's obvious it's a mask. It's supposed to be just dark, so like a skeleton's nose, but it just looks like like you say, cloth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which
he'd been partaking in some
possibly that's probably why his face is white and yellow.
Dangly dang.
It's a film, a very different film, doesn't it?
So I think that
explains his behaviour, though. I think.
yeah. So I think that's a big letdown because that's the main villain, and to have that not look and a lot of the
strange. Surely it'd have been easier just to whack an actual skull on his head.
Yeah.
Then, as you say, he's corpse-like, but not skull-like.
Yeah.
It's like they removed the outer layer of skin from Frank's face, but they didn't commit all the way and remove all of the flesh.
Glued some like cottage cheese over his face.
It does look.
And
but also
at
the end, when the sorceress begins to age and goes, "Right, she looks exactly like Skeletor."
Yeah, was that deliberate?
I don't think that was deliberate.
I'm not trying to create an army of Skeletors or anything.
No,
that'd be a good like poetic thing. I generally thought at that scene as well, he was going to become a bit more skinny.
Yeah, but he just wears gold.
Yeah,
And at the end, after the victory, all the good guys have suddenly got gold on them, and Gweldor's got little in his foot, little gold bits of tinsel and stuff, which is a nice touch. Probably money they shouldn't have spent. They'd already spent enough.
Yeah.
That
was actual gold as well.
Yeah. The actor who played Gweldor was a character actor who was in loads of stuff in the 80s. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, was he in Willow? Or have I imagined
very possible. I don't know.
Billy Barty. Is it?
I didn't
That's
look it up.
Name of the fellow who played him, I think.
Yeah, he's in lots of stuff. He probably was in Willow.
His mouth can move in real life, apparently, though. It's like, like in Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, but his ears moved a lot. I like that.
Then again, you say Skeletor's mouth didn't really move either, did it? I suppose that's the
little bit.
solid factor of the mark.
There was a lot of teeth action going on. They sort of put almost fangs on him, but mostly the acting was done in the eyes.
Which he could do.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
But his delivery of the lines is spot on though. That's
I've got a favourite. I wrote down my favourite line of his. Once I find it, it was. Oh no, where is it?
Well, I'll just mention with Meg Fox, they put like a breast piece on her, so her chest
because
stuck
they
up.
wanted a bit more, didn't they?
And but apparently it was so painful that that helped with the anger for her. She said that, and she was like bruised after. It's bad. You really would know.
I really wouldn't know.
Oh, okay. Were you there? Have you found the line?
I found it. I will wreak unforgettable harm on you. That's wonderful. Apparently, he was sort of quite involved in rewriting most of his lines, which is probably why his dialogue is good.
Yeah.
And nobody else's is.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I don't know if I can find it, but there's definitely some Shakespeare nods.
Yeah.
Throughout, to be honest. Should we go through what bits are ripping off other films? Because we mentioned some.
Yeah, while we're on Skeletor, the fact he falls to his death down a bottomless chasm.
Yeah.
He isn't thrown as such. He throws himself, though, so that might count. And that reminds me very much so of a certain Star Wars film.
Yes. Yeah.
That whole fall thing, that got me wondering where that sort of started in cinema. Because you look at it and think, it's a lot like Die Hard. But that came out the year after.
Vertigo in a way.
I was wondering. I looked this up a bit.
Stuff.
The Hitchcock thing. Wondering if it was Vertigo, and I found one that was earlier. Saboteur. Yeah. Where he goes Kane, and that's the earliest fall like that I can find. And that was wonderful.
There's actually a time with Citizen Kane, isn't it? Saboteur. Yeah.
Is there not?
Kane.
I mean, obviously it's after that, but there was a scene, don't know, in Psycho he falls down.
There's the I don't know if he falls, but you've got the bird's eye view when he/she starts stabbing the copper.
Yeah,
it's because he walks up the stairs.
Yeah,
and then suddenly bird's eye view. Ah, shit, he's dead now.
That's it. Yeah. But around the same time, the 1988-89 was it Batman? The Joker at the end falls. Obviously, Die Hard. There's been a few.
Must know where that.
But I'd say the earliest I found is 1942.
Yeah,
which is Saboteur,
which was a remake. of the 39 Steps, wasn't it?
Oh.
Or maybe he did a
Does he
scene
do a
similar
fall
to
on
that.
That's
I don't know if he does. Because the climax is in the Palladium, so...
Okay.
But yeah, that's
Right,
and it's a wonderful fall. And that was one of the best bits in the film.
Yeah, and the effects, considering that's when they'd run out of budget, didn't look too bad. For me, actually, the budget, I mean, when you see the CGI, of the synthesizer key, that looks good.
I don't see too many things I'm thinking, oh dear,
Yeah. The worst bits were the little, almost like hoverboard things they had.
Yeah,
That
kind
didn't
of
look too
motion.
good.
Yeah,
That
the
looks like
motion.
a sort of that PlayStation 1 Harry Potter game where you're trying to knock Malfoy off his broom.
Yeah.
That was what that reminded me of. Or
Slightly more realistic than that.
and then you
Yeah.
look at Spider-Man 3, which sort of had the hoverboardy, his glider thing.
Yeah,
and that somehow managed to look worse than in Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
Despite being 30 years later, 20
It's nothing
years
to do
later.
with budget, it's just entirely due to application.
But to mention before we do the film references, the one thing that really got me was the guy's meant to be a musician, and they take the cosmic key to a music shop. Who obviously know, but both of them are so
Close
short.
Encounters of the Third Kind in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah, I've written that down.
Oh yeah,
No, sorry,
yeah. It doesn't. But both of them are convinced it looks like a synthesizer. So clearly they know bugger all about music.
And apparently, but he's playing keyboards before he's seen it, hasn't he? Yeah, I do believe it. And as I say, he's got his I think it's a Casio he's got on, because I freeze the film to read the back of the keyboard.
Did you read it, or was it product placement? Because there's a chicken company is it Popeye's chicken or something what keeps popping up around the film? So I think that's product placement.
Keeping on the musical theme, in the shootout in the music shop, a rather nice mid-80s Fender Flame bites the dust.
Yeah.
And that made me rather sad, because they're nice guitars and quite hard to get hold of these days.
Well, the pop songs I made a reference to, the one I can remember most is Living in a Box Living in a Box. That was a great song to have in there.
Yeah, I mean,
they got Purple Haze. That's what most of the budget must have been.
Well, that's the thing, but this is before. Back then, you could get a song quite cheaply. It's not like...
Before Tarantino made it popular.
Yeah. I remember reading an interview with Richard Linklater about Dazed and Confused.
Oh, yeah.
And he said he would not be able to make a film of that scale with that budget now, because the music is all well-known acts, and you just wouldn't be able to do it. But there are a few big pop songs in there.
Traffic in there as well, I think.
I missed that, must admit.
Is it Traffic? Dear Mr. Vanson?
Yes, Traffic.
Yeah.
I missed it.
But yeah, that's interesting, because like now you get a Jimi Hendrix film about Jimi Hendrix, and you can't get Jimi Hendrix songs. So you look at that. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. The nod, so I'm going to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
We keep interrupting.
Yeah. Well, no,
Sorry,
it's good
I didn't mean to do that.
I'm kind of glad I got you guys. Some people are like, what did you think of it? It was good, and that would be it, and that's the end of the podcast. But I've noticed that trying to make He-Man kneel constantly, Skeletor, which is very Superman 2 with Zod.
Oh,
yes.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and that's sort of picked up, and that's a few years before that Superman 2 guy. So
I guess again that's whether you do get that kind of feel in the sense. I suppose when nowadays we think comic book films, that kind of superhero almost characters quite commonplace. The idea of making a film around that probably quite not easy, but people are willing to go. But if you see that the writers are involved in Supergirl as well, apart from Superman, and really we're only talking the first one, I guess. You haven't really got that many successful films of comic book kind of stature
not any, really. I mean,
Superman, then Batman in the 60s.
Yeah, that was TV though, wasn't it? So
so I'm really struggling to think of
film-wise,
anything else.
I can think of in between Superman and this, you had Swamp Thing. There was a Wes Craven Swamp Thing film.
Was that as early as that?
Yeah, that was 84 maybe.
I assume that was a 90s effort.
No, the sequel was 89. And you can see the poster for it on my wall right there. Yeah.
So in a strange way, it is quite, I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but it's quite a big budget and is.
It feels like a film
good.
that came out 10 years later than it did.
Yeah, it's quite
in a lot of ways.
Good in a way for what it is. Because if you watch Superman 2 is great.
Yeah.
But it is sort of a mess in a way that this isn't.
Yeah.
And need we not mention Superman 3 and Superman 4.
Which was filmed concurrently with this one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Superman 4 was won that and this are what were playing for Cannon Going Under. But is it that, or was the fact that they actually tried to make big budget films? Well, in the past they'd made bankable low budget films, which is probably what it was.
I suppose there is a shift there, yeah.
Superman 3, you've got Richard Pryor in, so I won't
and as it turns out, not Boney M.
That's not dwelling on that.
Yeah.
We've got to mention it now.
Yeah, I suppose that's a Mandela effect, but it's quite a niche one. I just assumed that, for some reason, that Boney M were the villains in Superman 3.
He got Boney M confused with Robert Vaughn and Richard Pryor.
Well, yeah, I think
I'm sure
in my
it
head
happens
I got
often.
them dressed up like the Kryptonian dudes in Superman 2. I was odd on that.
Yeah.
Because I suppose Boney M kind of dressed like that anyway. So I probably just saw a Boney M video and thought, Superman 3, innit?
Yeah.
Mary's
I'm not
child,
mad.
Mon-El.
I'm not mad.
But if you're listening, Hollywood, Man of Steel 2, I think we've got the idea for the villains.
Boney M's still knocking around, aren't they, in some capacity?
Well, no, Boney M themselves, they'd be the heroes, but it's the guy who's in Boney M who doesn't do any work apart from dance band and low-cut shirt.
Yeah.
He'll be bitter that they resented him for not singing at all, and it'll kick off and go Lex
Did
Luthor
Boney
on
M
shit.
have a Bez? Wow.
Yeah, they did, but the difference is, it's like if Bez claims he did all the work, despite having no evidence for it.
Bez did do all the work, though, didn't he? You see him dancing around every
No,
night.
but he's a bit...
Ryder's not doing that, is he?
He's a bit modest though, Bez, isn't he? We've gone off topic here, but
I'm listening.
Boney M's Bez, he's like, I definitely did it. I did all the singing. Everyone's like, no, you didn't, because it's done in a German accent, and you're not German.
Yeah.
But he done more than Man at Arms and Tita did in this movie.
Yeah, and he wasn't even in it, and he still did more than them.
Man at Arms is good. He
He's
talks
great.
about food twice.
He loves
Yeah.
it.
He got himself an in-joke
Yeah.
for no real reason.
So the bit where they were the first time of many you see the chicken, they're all shocked that they're eating animals. Now you're like, oh, this is all pro-vegetarian. It just goes down well with modern veganism and stuff. And then there's Man of Arms just enjoying it, and
He's loving it, isn't
they
he?
go,
He's having a great time.
yeah. And he tries to do some catchphrases as well. Like obviously you've got like May the Force be with you in Star Wars. In this they try to make Good Journey.
Journey. I've written that down in big letters.
Yeah, huge letters.
That was part of my mad rant in how this would become a nostalgia trip film. In that, well, at the end, how she saves her own parents from dying through some unexplained time travel element.
Yeah, it was not established before that.
Yeah, we'll leave that to one side for the moment. But the whole kind of thing that He-Man and Eternia is actually childhood.
No, don't do this.
I am that person, and I'm doing this simply because it's all I've got researched on this film.
Pauses record.
Give me 5 minutes.
No, I see where you're going. I see you.
And the Good Journey, don't say goodbye to your childhood in a way. It's kind of how it unfolds ever onwards.
It's got a bit end of Labyrinth as well.
Yeah, and that is very much what connects with it. The
Yeah.
80s a strange time.
Yeah, when
If you
films
think-
had morals and
No, but it's not even that, because you think that without even intending to a lot of the time, they always end up having that slightly glossy, rose-tinted, oh man, kind of feel to them. Which I think, it was not as though I watched them when I was a child, for any of these films, not even Labyrinth. I don't think I saw that probably till I was late teens. And it wasn't around, so I'm born after it was released.
yeah.
But the 80s, maybe it's just kind of that age of filmmakers. You're kind of coming off the back of your kind of new wave people.
Yeah,
They all kind of look a bit,
all
we're all growing up.
Spielberg times,
Yeah.
isn't it?
and that's probably why people have, I'm 38. People my age who were kids during the 80s, we've attached ourselves to these films more than say people who grew up in the 2000s because they have that about them.
Yeah, I say you struggle to think.
Well, we've got the remake of Freaky Friday.
You struggle to think of an era of film that has that kind of, particularly like child to teen age, I suppose. You're talking about that has that kind of nostalgic feel to.
Yeah, and even though in this, it's clearly aimed at sort of 12-year-olds, but the main character's sort of 17, 18, the teens.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing about setting it on Earth. They've got them characters for the audience to relate to more than just.
So apart from, as you say, man at Food Arms, that woman
That's
with the
some top
bandana.
flight obnoxious eating noises on his part, isn't it?
Yeah.
No,
Top
what-
only
no,
by
no, hang
Michael
on.
Caine in Tenet.
Guildo, he takes the biscuit, or he takes the chicken,
yeah.
really. But he's filth. The way he pours bloody gravy down himself, he should have been sacked from the set.
And,
on that day.
why was there?
He is, but
Just have a thought. I haven't haven't even made a note about this, but there's just at one point there's no just a cow wandering about.
Yes.
Why does that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, because they go to Earth, they think they're on a hostile planet.
There's a,
Oh,
They have no
yeah,
idea what's
that
going on,
kind of gag,
and it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's just a cow. But
yeah.
I mean,
what is it
that's
just
taken-
about? It
But the
is.
thing is, that should have been funny in it. It wasn't.
No, it's just you're not really sure what's going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a reverse Wizard of Oz, isn't it? You go from this sort of wonderful magical land to somewhere
Yeah.
quite boring.
Yeah, it was kind of reverse Flash Gordon as
Yeah.
well. The plot is, you're on the Earth trying to.
It's,
It does suffer somewhat for that, I think.
it's like
Yeah.
the dream sequence is the actual film,
Yeah.
and then when they actually wake up, they're in the happy place again. Oh no,
Yeah.
or the girl and the boy dream that they're actually where they are.
Yeah. Well, the actual
Oh, well, my
ending
God.
of
Why are they in it? Why is that? Why
Because
is that
they
the film
needed
made?
they needed a songsmith.
No, they didn't know, did they? They could have
Because
just made
Woodrow
a
clearly-
film.
a music maker, a master music maker.
Yeah.
It's
They
very-
should have
based
just
on
filmed it
literally
all
no
in the
evidence.
desert like
Yeah.
Beastmaster and made an actual He-Man film.
But it's interesting as well. They say, "Oh, you're a music master. That's great." And based on no evidence at all, he just accepts their faith in him.
He talks about his bands a lot, but never.
You never see him.
Yeah.
You see him do a sound check, and
They should have
Just-
done a bit where the
Do you know-
speaker explodes.
do you know a bit-
Back to the Future?
Well, this is the-
And villains.
Yeah.
Go back to that synthesizer. You're saying he claims to be an expert of instruments, as you say, has no idea this is
Yeah.
not a synthesizer. Then, when he comes, let's test out, let's see what this baby can do. It doesn't really question the fact there's nowhere to connect any of his wires to, and just tries to mic it up.
That's Japanese technology for you.
But
No,
he
but he doesn't
can
say, I haven't even got that connection.
But he
He
can
just-
play it like there's notes on it. That's how he. Does he not?
But he doesn't even shred though. He's not a teenager. He's not a real person from the 80s.
He has
So
got a tie on with a leather jacket. Though,
He does have that.
Yeah,
but at what point
white
does
socks.
he play at any point in the film on his synthesizer or the cosmic key? And answer me this: Final Countdown, Jump, like any other major synth
He's
riff or
going for a
solo.
third one. He didn't have it.
I was going to say Maniac, but I don't know.
Mania.
That would have been quite good.
Yeah, if he'd have played that, it'd have kind of made sense. It
Or
wouldn't-
a bit of Hall and Oates or something. But he didn't
What?
do that.
If he'd done Out of Touch.
Yeah, but he didn't because he's a filthy layabout.
And they spent all the budget on Jimi
Starfleet
Hendrix.
lieutenant.
Yeah.
The musician bit of it reminded me very much of Back to the Future. They made the lad
Yeah.
a musician, and the end with the we can go back and alter it was very Back to the Future as well.
It just seemed like an
But it-
afterthought, didn't it?
Yeah, and there was no. They said, why didn't we go back a bit earlier? And they just have. Nobody's altered it to save them. They just did go back. And interestingly, she wakes up in her bedclothes like she's just woke up in the morning. He's still got his same gear on.
He's definitely he's a layabout. Isn't
Oh,
he?
He's,
okay.
he's Martin McFly though. Sleeps in his
Oh,
clothes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's an interesting point because at the end she's sort of I've got the opportunity to save my parents here.
But in doing so, she no longer wants to leave. So it's just a strange
but
kind
then
of moral there.
she's like she goes and steals the keys or whatever, doesn't she, and runs
Yeah.
off. That's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah,
Not
but-
that.
Yeah.
But then
Haven't you seen the remake of The Time Machine?
I'd have been too shy and socially inept to have done that. And I'd
Just
have
let 'em die.
Accidentally, just sort of been too awkward and just let them die again.
Or you'd have gone on the plane with them, probably.
And I'd have that's
you would have just died with them.
yeah,
That'd have been your solution.
that's what would have
to the problem.
happened. So that's why I should never be the protagonist in a film, I suppose. But then again, Skeletor's the protagonist, isn't he? To be honest. So
He is the one with vision, isn't he?
yeah.
He-Man's blocking progress, but you're not really sure why.
What's He-Man's job apart from walking around with a sword?
No, his job is
He's
no Skeletor.
Sean
No.
Connery impersonator in Zardoz.
Yeah. But with all the faults, we've listed, but there's nothing. The faults are quite likeable. It's like that sort of adds to the
it's got
charm.
heart as a film. I'll give
Yeah.
it that.
And
It does want to be a film. I'm not going to say it wants to be a good film. Thank God, it wants to be enjoyable. But
yeah, and it wants to sell stuff. That's what this. And for a film which is made to sell a product,
it's
it's
strange
very.
little product, isn't there?
Well, there's apart from Beastman, all the henchmen are new characters which were meant to sell toys. Geldor was meant to sell a toy, but it wasn't successful enough for them to. No, I'll buy Geldor because I remember getting angry with my Orko because he didn't float in midair.
They would have been cool I guess it would have been difficult to do having Orko there, but because he's a great design, isn't he?
Yeah.
If they'd managed to, he could have just been the same character, and they could have had Billy Barty play him still.
Yeah,
It's been all right.
yeah, they could have just put Slimer Roy from Ghostbusters in it because it's the same character. They did. There was even with that unicorn in Dungeons and Dragons was the same thing.
Oh God, that's a film. That's a film I forgot existed.
Dungeons and Dragons. They did. Oh, do you mean what was nothing like the cartoon?
Yeah, but it was amazing, wasn't it?
No.
Didn't that have Jimmy Olsen in out of Superman? The
actual Jimmy Olsen.
That was a good film. I liked that film.
Jimmy Olsen, what, the one who in the Christopher Reeves films?
No, in
dies.
the Dean Cain.
Oh yeah, it did. It did have him in it. Yeah.
I really liked that film. I've not seen it probably for about 15 years.
When it came out, which would have been 15, maybe 20 years ago, I was too angry that it wasn't based on the cartoon, and I still am. So, no.
Perhaps we'll do that at a later date.
You say how you like it, and I'm like, no, it's shit. No, but I've got to watch.
You haven't seen it.
No, I saw it. Oh yeah, I saw it. Cinema. I did watch it, but I've got to watch it as a. Much like people should watch Master of the Universe, don't compare it to the old cartoon. Yeah. And I think if you watch Master of the Universe with that,
that's why we've been alright, because I haven't seen the cartoon. Don't know.
I've not really seen it.
Yeah.
And when I saw this, I would have been 6. And I'd have seen the cartoons, but I think I was that young
that you didn't really connect the dots.
Yeah, so I was like, "Where's Orko? Where's?" But to be honest, I just wasn't bothered. And my parents had told me that, like, I was 6, and nowadays you don't really see 6-year-olds in cinema because they can't sit still, and their parents don't take them when they're that young. Yeah. And they said that I was being all hyper, like excited and talking through the trailers and through the ads. Then as soon as that...
It's like a cinema trip with you now.
Yeah. Selfie time. We couldn't do cinema selfies then, that's a shame. But...
Polaroid.
Yeah.
Brass rubbing.
Yeah, because I'm that old. But they said the second the Superman type credits come up, I just sat still and didn't move till the end of the film. Wow. That's how much I liked it at that age. But it was just the joy of seeing that cartoon on the screen, and it's quite there's not a real boring moment in the film. It's kind of actiony and plot all the way through, which helps with the length of it. And I suppose being that age, I wouldn't have remembered. I understood all of what was going on, but the action and fun bits make up for it. Imagine taking a 6-year-old now to see, say, maybe Black Panther. I don't think they'd be bored during little bits, wouldn't they? But then a 12-year-old, 13-year-old would get it.
Paced. Yeah. As you say, there is action fairly consistently in a way that... Do you get the same in modern films? It's kind of, I suppose...
I don't think got that in films back then. Like,
I suppose
if you usually compare it to, like,
big segment,
Star Wars.
Small segment, big segment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Star
Wars. They're
unusual because they like that free thing at once, and they like a space battle, a lightsaber battle, and a shootout.
There's quite a lot of just like C-3PO wandering around, just sort of annoying everyone, which is brilliant. Yeah. But in terms of pacing, maybe Master of the Universe has the edge on that.
Yeah,
it does remind you of a Swashbuckler, I guess, in that sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. One thing I've just peered down at one page's notes. You said at the bit at the end about your childhood, there is actually the line, "Keep this with you," and they give them the...
exactly. They carry their childhood around
keep
with
it
them.
Eternity will always be near. And that's something I don't... I don't really remember that bit. Well,
I mean, it's a strange thing, but it's just... You can't imagine it in a 70s film. I can't imagine it in a 90s film. In an 80s film, somehow making childhood some kind of don't worry, you're grown up, but you still be there. Only exception perhaps being the Muppets, but then that's because the Muppets are ageless.
If this had been made in the 90s, it would have been like the Brady Bunch film or Galaxy Quest or something.
Or it would have been starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. It would have been a 15 rating.
And that would have been amazing,
Unlike, what's it, Street Fighter. With Raul Julia.
Yeah, he was great in that, but the rest of the film was... But that's the thing, that this film manages to, I think, have humour, but it's not like you mentioned the Brady Bunch, but it's not spoofing what it was originally being. It just
I wish it had, in a way. I admire the fact that they didn't go
It could be camp,
because it would have been really easy. But I think I'd have...
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make me laugh in the way that Flash Gordon does.
I think you want everything camp but
just,
He-Man in a way.
Wonderful.
Which is...
I mean... Like I said, I think that's what makes the film interesting.
Yes.
Because it is kind of... Even though we've listed... And there's probably more things that it's blatantly ripping off... It is its own thing, and it's quite a unique film.
Yeah.
And I think it was you who mentioned a more recent film which seems to have ripped this off.
Yeah, that's the Sonic the Hedgehog film is more or less the same premise, and some of the shots are identical.
Yeah,
Particularly sort of Robotnik, sort of just coming down that street on his big hilarious sort of tank spaceshipy thing is much like Skeletor's sort of floating throne.
Yeah, and obviously the whole getting back to his own.
And
That's bizarre.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Sonic.
when I watched Sonic, there's something familiar about it, but it was you who nailed it when you mentioned that.
But you can understand why they did it with Masters of the Universe, but it does make you think, why did they do that with Sonic the Hedgehog?
Because you're trying to make a very successful, particularly nowadays where, you know...
But they could just make an actual sort of Sonic the Hedgehog film, and then they just sort of didn't. Which, I still enjoyed it, it was a good film, but you think, there's loads of stuff they could have done, and they're not bound by budgetary constraints in the same way, because the technology makes it easier that they could just kind of animate as much of it as they wanted to and have these kind of crazy worlds going on. But they chose not to. I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
but that's perhaps a different conversation to have.
It could be that the filmmakers sort of just grew up with films like this, and it's subconsciously,
yeah,
it is very like it. And budget, even for Sonic, for the first film, because they obviously want to make more.
Yeah,
maybe it was that's keep the budget down a little bit, so that then for a sequel
had to spend all the budget on reanimating Sonic.
yeah. Well, was that? I've got a theory on that wasn't
Publicity stunt.
Yeah, I don't know, but it could
believe it.
So
I haven't seen the Sonic film, but is it kind of similar to this? It's really only got two locations.
Identical. Well, it's this, but with a road trip in it.
Oh right,
yeah.
But I do quite like that thing about old films. They didn't really flit about too bloody much. I can't keep up with these modern films all the kids watch nowadays. Those young persons.
How old are you?
24.
Okay, but I certainly find films from this era they are just more fun for me. I find. I mean, have either of you seen Howard the Duck yet?
Not yet.
I've been on the list for a while.
Yeah, because I think I might have to get you two involved when we do that, because that's got it's kind of the same plot. Howard, I don't want to spoil too much. He's thrown to Earth mysteriously. Someone's chased him, and there's a bit of a road movie in it. Has to save the world. So it's kind of an easy sell.
George Lucas
produced it. Yeah.
Is there
explains
reasonably
a lot about it.
is there reasonably famous people in it? I get the feeling there's
Leah Thompson from Back to the Future, and Jeffrey Jones from Prison now, but he was in a lot of Tim Burton films and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and and Tim Robbins was in it, and he won the Raspberry Award for Worst Actor for that film.
Everyone loves him now, don't they?
Yeah, but they loved him for a bit. Then he hadn't really done much since Shawshank, has he? Let's be honest.
Now he's sort of one of them, and sort of Hollywood liberal icon or something.
Yeah,
he doesn't really need to act anymore.
No, he's all right. He's really good in it. I think he really. But that's for another episode.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's quite interesting how these things go around, and you can pick Masters of the Universe apart for ripping off films, but then 30 years later, another film has borrowed from that.
I'm still fascinated by that, because you can understand the stuff that Masters of the Universe rips off. It's more kind of like general cinematic kind of, it's not actual. Oh, we're just going to steal that from a film. It's just kind
Unless
of
it's Superman.
Yeah, that's the one that kind of makes sense. But it's kind of little bits here and there. Just kind of that's what films do.
Yeah.
It's because you throw things in people have seen before. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. But as much as I like the film, it seems an odd one to look back and say, maybe, as you say, maybe it's before that's something they looked at. But
I think it's very similar, but as I said, probably not as deliberate as you'd think.
Yeah.
But interestingly, they're both films to sell things. It's Sonic from a game and He-Man from the toys. So it might just be they go for the safe plot, and that's
and it allows you to sort of get actors looking
humans
like
in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which probably helps
Well,
with marketability to normos or something.
Well, people to promote the film and characters. When you're playing a game, you don't necessarily need to attach yourself to the characters to relate to the story of the game, whereas in a film you do. And you need stars in a film for the casual viewer, like Jim Carrey being in Sonic the Hedgehog. Example, if my mum was to want to watch a film, she quite likes Jim Carrey, but couldn't give a toss about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
So might watch it because
I
he's
suppose
in
it
it.
makes them more than just an animation as well.
Yeah.
'Cause as good as a lot of animations are, CGI or otherwise, when you start saying there's actual acting in it,
Yeah.
it's like a real film.
I mean,
isn't
I'm
it?
that guy who wants a Sonic Underground film, but that'll never happen. So
Sonic was a hit though.
Yeah.
A
long time ago.
yeah. We touched on the musician, didn't we? Who the composer?
Bill Conti,
Yeah.
the king of the American sports drama.
The
Rocky, Karate
Kid.
Kid, and Master of the Universe. Isn't it?
yeah, and about another 140 credits. He's done loads. But I think the music really
You can-
adds to the epicness.
Oh,
of
There
stuff.
was a strange story behind it I was reading up, because there was some strike with the performing or the
Yeah.
recording in America at the time, so he had to just ship off the score to various conductors and orchestras around Europe, essentially. And then they got the recording back, and him and the sound editor just piecemeal different bits from different recordings all together.
Oh, really? I hadn't read that.
That was just
Oh, my
like a strange
Yeah.
thing he had to do. Just
Bizarre,
it just for a film, that just sort of mental.
Yeah.
And for it to come out and be as good as it is, considering that, is
Yeah.
Yeah.
pretty remarkable. I say, he's obviously sort of riffing on other people.
Yeah, I was going to say,
But also,
it's a
he's Bill Conti, he
masterclass.
can do whatever he wants.
It's a masterclass in riffing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you take,
Fantastic.
as you say, I think near the beginning of this, because clearly this is meant to be a Superman style theme, but you don't actually think, oh, that's literally just Superman. You know where it's going.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
But there
Yeah.
are definite bits where he's doing things that's sort of like the "Can You Read My Mind" theme, whatever. He's doing it, and you can tell that he's trying to get as close as he possibly can without doing it, and that is admirable in itself. I think that's
Yeah.
great.
But a little riff that the time key thing he makes
Oh, yeah.
is very catchy, and that's in your head. Do we assume he wrote that?
That's,
Yeah,
I don't know, because he does incorporate it into the score,
So,
which
yeah.
is brilliant.
So, but I think the score does sound like it comes from a much higher budget
Yes,
film.
yeah.
Well, he's a high budget composer, dare I say it.
There
But
were
then
a lot of
again,
high-budget people on
He
the
was-
film, though.
yeah, I mean-
just they were paid nothing.
Yeah.
because they did it. That's why I like the film, though. I suppose Dolph Lundgren may become bigger later, but
Yeah. Well, they all
Frank
kind
Langella would
of.
have been moderately big.
Yeah,
by that
he would have
point,
been,
surely. But so it's
Yeah, and there's some good character actors in it, like James Tolkien, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of. I think they were very clever how they went about it, and
Yeah.
to-
they got
to-
the things that matter in a way.
Yeah, and Dolph Lundgren wasn't a huge star, but Rocky IV was a bit,
massive
yeah, that
film,
was huge, and it was quite kind of like there must have been people waiting to see what he'd be in next. So just gonna because we were nearly on an hour here,
Right.
so we're gonna sort of try to wrap things up a bit. First question, which kind of touched on. I mean, how do you think it stands up to compared to modern films? We have kind of touched on that. haven't we?
Yeah.
So do you think in general well or?
I think it depends what you want from a film. If you want just literally to sit down, have a great time for 2 hours, and it depends how critical you are, and like I want to be impressed by visuals alone.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think it's bad, but then again, I'm not too fussed about those things. But I think it is a very enjoyable film. And I think there is more kind of emotional depth there if you want it, which I don't think you can always say about more modern films.
True.
And the fact that it's been quite clearly aped by one of the biggest films of the last year or so
Yeah, yeah.
says a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you think that it should have been? Well, I think it should, but for what we got, do you think it should have been a bigger hit?
I mean, I can get why it wasn't.
Yeah, I was literally going to say the same thing. I like the plot, but I feel it lacks something. There seems to lack a reason why it's happening. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but the start very much just starts, and then you follow it through. I think that's great for a watching perspective because you can just literally pick it up, run with it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But to kind of really make this is a film you've got to see, it's going to. I don't know why that should be. So in a way, if you think the plot to the first Superman film is not strong.
No.
It came along too late as well, didn't it? Really, because sort of the buzz of He-Man had kind of died by that point a bit, hadn't it?
Yeah, the cartoons were still being repeated, but I don't think they're still being made.
Yeah.
So that might be how Canon got it, because they might have got it cheap. My feeling's always been, I think it's a great film. If not, I wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be talking about it. But I do think that the reason it failed is because it didn't actually give the audience what they wanted.
Yes.
Whereas it's a perfectly fine, fun film, and maybe the plot would have been better as a sequel. Maybe there could have been a film
Yeah.
already set on the planet with all the characters, And then
more He-Man, more Skeletor, particularly the two of them together, because there's very much, I suppose, the conflict is distant.
Filler episode of a TV show.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Oh, that episode where they get stuck on Earth.
Yeah. And there are some people who love it, and everyone else is like, why did they make that one? It feels a little bit like that. Not in a bad way, necessarily.
That's what's happened.
So I think personally, as a film, I think it's great. There's a He-Man film. It didn't follow.
I suppose the people they're really trying to get through the door, as you say, first thing first, they're going to be, I fucking love He-Man. And they went in and they're like, I don't like this He-Man.
And I think what might have affected it for the time, if this was released now, say it's what's the kids like now? I'm trying to think of say a Marvel film, say a new Marvel character, but everyone knows it, everyone's read the comics and the cartoons, and they release a film of that with a standard, half decent trailer. It would be released worldwide at the same time. Everyone would go and see it, and it would make money. Whereas this was released in America first, and then it wasn't released over. It was released in August in America, and released in December in this country. And there was a lot of places it got afterwards. So I think word may have spread.
But by the time people have heard about it, by the time it comes out, the word's gone almost.
And then people have said, oh, it's not like the cartoon, you won't like it. So it didn't make as much money because of that.
They didn't really have the budget to promote it because they were canon films.
And
wasn't there a whole thing that in America, it was stuck in sort of matinee showings. And because they sort of couldn't convince the theatres and stuff to show it on
exactly.
So
there's a lot to it, and I say reviews. I know they didn't have the internet then, but you'd be able to reviews from America would have got over here pretty much instantly because of TV.
Well, I suppose as soon as it comes out in cinema,
the
picture house going to be the reason that you can try and say, should you go see that film? Well, all the comment from America is this.
Exactly. So it probably didn't get much of it, but I remember it seeming massive. But I was so young, and I think we saw it at the cinema in Ipswich, which is now the Regent. So theatre-sized cinema, where there'd have been one screen. So every showing would have been fairly busy for most films. So my perspective of it is different to what it actually was. It's such a strange. If it was released now, a film based on something like that would never just get a small release like that. And by the time it came out over here, actually, Canon were probably pretty much over. Which is it's a shame. There's a brilliant documentary about Canon. I forget what it's called, and there's a lot about just how they built up from basically sex comedies and stuff to just making these bizarre, often brilliant films. But it's just like they just done it. They just made things.
What other ones did they make? Just have interest.
They made
all that kind of thing, was it?
Well, the two sort of big budget ones were the Superman and this, and then there's lots of Chuck Norris films and ninja films and.
It's strange. The two things that you think to me it most feels like, I might just be because he's half naked and's got a sword. It's kind of like a Conan the Barbarian as Superman. So as you say,
Gary Goddard did the Conan the Barbarian thing at, is it Universal?
Yeah, he does the ride.
The ride show thing. Yeah.
So just as you feel like, and then the toys. If it had been released 2-3 years earlier, you kind of think it may have captured the zeitgeist.
Too late, like the Angry Birds film.
It's better than that, sure.
Oh yeah. Too soon. In terms of capturing the zeitgeist.
Gonna end on it. IMDb is where I look at ratings. I don't really get Rotten Tomatoes, but it's got 5.4 on there, which I think is far too low.
I think it's harsh.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something.
IMDb's a strange, isn't it? Things can get inflated and deflated quite quickly. I suppose it depends how many people have watched it and who's watched it. But
I mean, what would you because IMDb you can vote on it at any time. Yeah. So from now, what would you give it out of 10?
Do you have to give whole numbers?
No, you can give it. Don't just say 6.9 for a laugh.
I'm not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, because I think to be fair, it's somewhere between a 7 and an 8. So to be fair, probably like a 7.2.
Yeah, that's
because I would recommend, but clearly it's not this is going to change your life.
No.
You know what I mean?
if you lent the DVD to someone, next time you see them, they're walking down the high street in pants with a sword.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic and life changing for all of us.
Yeah, I because I can't do 6.9. I suppose I'll have to bang on 7. Most of that I think is down to Frank Langella, who's
He is
He's
incredible. We
great.
haven't talked enough about
Yeah,
that,
I
probably.
mean, Frank Langella, the man who's sort of capable of playing this sort of horrible, evil, megalomaniac kind of dude with a deformed face, and he also played Skeletor.
But in actual fact, you're right, much lower than that.
That was a Frost Nixon joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I've got a Cutthroat Island joke.
I've never seen that. That's one I imagine I would have loved.
It's alright. It doesn't really make any sense, and there's no real plot to it.
Yeah, you wait until you watch Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
But yes, so I think, yeah, obviously I love it, but that's because I grew up watching it. But it's good to see that it didn't blow you away, but you certainly enjoyed it.
It worked, but it works on its own terms, I think, and it
Yeah.
quite easily have not done.
Yeah.
And is admirable for that. And yeah, it's just fun, isn't it? I did really like it.
I'll say,
I probably liked it more than a 7, but it doesn't deserve more.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
There's
I mean,
a lot of films you can say.
Well, that's the thing. I suppose for me, if it was enjoyment level, the fact that it's 33 years later,
pushing a 9.
yeah,
really.
9, or for me possibly 9.5, 10.
Yeah.
The fact that I watched it the other night, I've lived in this flat a year and a half, and I've watched it 3 times in that.
I mean, I watched it twice in the past week.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it both
Yeah.
times. So
Yeah, and I think we'll be able to tell with future episodes of this. With hopefully you guys come back and do some more.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah.
have us.
But I think I'm going to try to get different people. But you guys, what I like is you didn't just watch it; you've researched and stuff as well.
really cool.
The less good films will not
really
be.
pretentious plotline, but nostalgia in there.
Yeah, I'm going to beat you up for that in a bit.
But,
You can record that if you like.
yeah, I think that the quality of the film shows because we were actually talking about it, enjoying talking about it,
Yes.
and we could go on for much
Shut us
longer.
up.
But we've gone on for an hour and 7, so and I've done a little intro, which you guys will hear back. But just thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Pleasure.
Thanks to everybody for listening. Find the Facebook page, which is I don't know. If you type,
Vault of Cult. That's
if you type in ACM's Vault of Cult. there's a- Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When I done the, I asked if anyone could any good at logos, and we've got a great picture for the background. Thanks to James for that. I'll link up him as an artist. But someone just scribbled. They'd crossed out an N and put an L, and but they're very, very, very witty. Thanks for that, Joe.
Wow.
Cheers. And comment on the Facebook page or anywhere you can what you think of the film and if you agree or disagree with us, and then we can fight about it online because we're too scared to in person. Fun films next week or next time. That we're going to probably do Supergirl or Howard the Duck. I'm not going to give away too many of the films we're doing in advance, but I think this was a great one to start with. And cheers for listening.